We have the entire first season that has dropped. Here on the West Coast, it dropped at 12 a.m., August 29th, Judgment Day for the true Terminator fans. I stayed up last night and watched the entire first season. I think what I'll do is brush with broad strokes and not do any spoilers, and then rank it within the larger Terminator tier list and go into spoilers after that. So we'll have 3 parts of this video. So generally speaking, we have the same formula that we're used to in Terminator, where the Terminator goes back into the past, in this case 1997, right before day 0, hence the name Terminator Zero. Protector is sent along. We see a little bit of the future in this, which is cool, and the decision-making process of who goes back in time. There is a scientist making a counter AI to combat Skynet on August 29th, 1997. So we're sticking here with the Terminator and Terminator 2 timeline, it seems like. Although the screenwriter and creator did say that all of the Terminators are relevant in this story. The story revolves around the scientist and his kids, a protector and the hunter. And an interesting thing is when it gets really philosophical is in the discussions between the creator and the AI that he's developing, and the AI asking why, she should help humanity defeat Skynet. Now let's shift away from that, and I'm going to tell you where I think it fits into the tier rankings. Obviously, the Terminator and T2 are S tier films. They're unbeatable. It's almost identical to the Alien franchise, where the first 2 are superior to everything else. T3, I put it in A tier. I know that's controversial to some. There's a lot of hate towards that movie. I like it. I think it's great. I think that TX is an amazing villain.
I like this car.
Wait.
Terminator Salvation, I hated upon rewatch, and I hate it years later. I'm going to put that in the D column. Despite the great actors in there, that was a victim of the writer's strike back in the day. Never really fleshed out a story. Sarah Connor Chronicles, that show, victim of the writer's strike, like Terminator Salvation. Pretty good, though. I put that at B level. Terminator Genesis, I like a lot more than most Terminator franchise fans do. I put that in the B category. It could have been a great trilogy, but it didn't do so well, so it was ended. And then they try and start another trilogy and then bring James Cameron back to write a little bit with Dark Fate, which was an abomination. So I put it in the D category. So with Terminator Zero, after watching the first episode, maybe the first 2 episodes, they're short episodes, I thought, oh, this has the potential to be really, really great. And then it kind of just slinks off for 5 episodes, and you don't really get anything juicy until the anti-penultimate episode, the penultimate episode, and the finale. And the finale is severely disappointing. So I imagine it's set up as a multi-season story that they're doing, but there was too much setup and not enough payoff for this first season. So at this point, I have to put Terminator Zero in the C level category. Very disappointing because I had high hopes for this. It's just not that great. Now, getting into the spoilers, I'm going to go through my notes. And if you haven't seen it yet and don't want spoilers, here's your chance. So the episodes in this show are titled Model 101, Model 102, Model 103. It's kind of cool. So in Model 101, we see 2022. There is resistance fighters tracking down Terminator and trying to steal some code from him. It's pertinent to time travel. We go back to 1997, and it's very film noir, and a tip of the hat to James Cameron, tech noir. It's really cool. I like it a lot, especially in the anime style. The tech noir actually jives pretty well. For any of those that have seen Cyberpunk, Edge Runners, kind of the same vibe. Robot Kitty, that's cool. Who doesn't love that? I definitely get some iRobot vibes from these initial robots. We get a tip of the hat to Dual Key, at Cyberdyne. So Malcolm, the scientist who's creating this AI, have this back and forth, almost like therapy session of why she should help humanity survive. And there's some interesting diatribes that go on between them. And ultimately, she says something like, well, you've created me as a weapon against AI. I'm going to use you as a weapon against the same AI because it's enemy of an enemy is my friend type of thinking. And we see this prophet in the future who is discussing to resistance fighters about time travel and how they should go back. At first, I thought maybe this is Sarah Connor, even though the developer said there would be no Connors in this. It's most likely this person who's sent back in time by themselves at an older age. And this gets into some weird vibes because she ends up being the mother of Malcolm, the scientist who is creating this AI. And this story is kind of lifted from this really great show that was on the Sci-Fi Network years ago called Continuum. If anyone's seen Continuum, you'll know what I'm talking about, where you at one point you have a grandfather being younger than his son and the grandson's the oldest one or something like that. It's really kind of a cool story. The Protector has the best lines in this whole thing, per usual. I mean, going back to Kyle Reese, Protector always does. Come with me if you want to live. In this one, she says, "I need weapons or we are all dead." Awesome. And her version of the Kyle Reese line is, "You can stay and die or you can come with me." Now we have this nanny who's a robot and no one knows that she is. I mean, it's pretty obvious that she is at first. And the story comes out that this used to be basically the lover of the guy who's creating the new AI. Very strange, intertwined, kind of like love triangle, except it's with this robot that he's created and then the AI who is their daughter. Strange. This series has some pretty gnarly gore. It's done in anime, so I think they get away with a lot more in that. But it is up there with the first Terminator film, which just has some gnarly kills in it. So the AI is in a trinity almost, so like 3 spirits floating around that represent like birth, life, and death. And ultimately, she says that her name means heart, mind, and spirit. And that's the cool thing about using the Japanese environment for this is their language is really cool and you can do fun plays on words with names. And the screenwriter, this guy who kind of came out of nowhere, Mattson Tomlin, he rose in Hollywood a few years ago by being brought on to the Batman film starring Robert Pattinson as a fixer of the script. So he came in last minute and fixed the script, and apparently people discovered he's a pretty good writer. This series, not too bad, not the best writing in Terminator. Obviously, that goes to James Cameron, but perhaps the second best writer who's touched the series. Now, around Model 106, or episode 6 of the show, it starts to get into pseudo-intellectualism and draw on a little bit. We talk about the paradox of time and it, okay, everyone has done that, but it's belabored to a point where it's like it turns the Terminator story into a meaningless series of events that really have no cause and effect. That's disappointing. I don't like that twist on the story. It undoes everything. And I know where it's going. It's trying to get into quantum mechanics and multiverseness, but it does need to be grounded in some Newtonian physics to get us back to the real intention that James Cameron had, that you can alter things in a meaningful way. Now, guns are hard to come by in this because it's Japan, so we get some other interesting weapons that are used. A crossbow that the Terminator implants on himself, interesting, but ultimately, it's still mainly guns that are the weapons. My biggest complaint about the show is annoying characters. And the kids in this are annoying characters. They're not easy to empathize with. The scientist is not easy to empathize with. By the end of it, the only character I'm rooting for is the Skynet T-808 who's trying to kill everybody and stop the new AI Kokoro because she uses robots to kill too. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know. I kind of like this 0 and 1 version of AI, like this machine learning version of AI, as opposed to the aware, self-aware AI that they've tried to create as like this better version of AI. I like the old school 0 and 1 one. He just actually seems like he has a purpose. In episode 7, we get a complete series of exposition throughout the years. Malcolm basically tells his life story and how he's actually from, he was born in 2025 to a doctor who looks like Catherine Brewster, maybe is, and then rises through the ranks as a young kid in the resistance. And then he comes across this general who he doesn't like, who looks like Michael Ironside's general that we see in Terminator Salvation. I don't think those characters are those characters, but it's cool that they use them in the anime to look like them a little bit. The Protector, I believe, turns out to be the Prophet, as I mentioned earlier. And that's cool. Those are different twists on the same twist that James Cameron has come up with in the past. if this show gets a second season, I expect a lot more from it. This would be a decent jumping off point if it were a first season, mid-season finale. But it just sets up too much with far too little payoff. And the nihilism about time travel thing really just guts the whole Terminator franchise. They had an opportunity for this hardcore ending, which they don't. I guess this because it's a second iteration and they tell us what had already happened in the past about the kid hitting the EMP device and destroying Kokoro, and Skynet just wins. There is a hint at this in the first episode when Malcolm is driving through the streets of Tokyo. His license plate says 1997-3. So that tells me that this is the third iteration of 1997, at least the third iteration of 1997 that involves Malcolm and his kids. The first one being where Skynet wins, like we always know. The second being where he creates Kokoro and his son destroys it before it can help. And then this third one being where Kokoro can possibly help humanity or align with humanity to defeat Skynet. Terminator fans, definitely check it out. Let me know what you guys think of this down. Please subscribe if you haven't already. For those who aren't Terminator fans, I'm not so sure it's worth your time. Go watch Cyberpunk Edge Runner instead, and the Blade Runner cartoons that were done right before Blade Runner 2049. Speaking of which, the faux intellectualism in Terminator Zero, it's kind of a play off of what we see in Blade Runner 2049, which was done at a much higher, more sophisticated level. So in terms of like reality and how scientific advancements work, the Blade Runner series is much better in this sense than what Terminator Zero has tried to offer Terminator.